Hey everybody, welcome back to the O-20 series. This is FrSky Steve. We're on episode 15. This is actually the very last episode where we're talking about the Grand Tundra model and this model that we set up. It is feature complete. We have all the different flight modes set up. We have dual rates, expo, everything you need to fly is on this model. So right now I am throwing icing on the cake, and this icing is brought to you by Ethos 1.5.x. These are some new features that showed up
Sensor
in
loss.
Ethos with the addition of Ethos 1.5.x, and I wanted to point out how we use them. I can show you what they are a little bit later, but for now I'll take you through this. We have our screen right now that looks like the screen we've always had. We've gone through and we've talked about how we set up these different timers not too long ago, but now I want to take you and show you what would happen once we turn throttle cut off.
Throttle active.
So right away you can see at the top of the menu here that the light comes on and telemetry starts to record. And also we jump to a different screen, and that's something that's new to Ethos in 1.5. So this is what I call the takeoff screen. I set it up. I wanted something that I can move the sticks around and just make sure that everything looks like they're moving in the right direction before we go up. And what I do is I can move the sticks around. This is the left stick, this is the right stick. Everything seems to be working just fine. Now when I start to give it some throttle, you can see that the clock, the 6-minute countdown clock, is starting, and you can see that I have 100% VFR. And now that we're starting to fly, I want to point out one other thing. I can click on any part of this right now, right? But what's happening now, we start to get up in the air, and I'm starting to feel comfortable with the flight, and I want to switch into
flight mode cruise.
The cruise mode, mode 2. And right away, a lot of things have changed. Right at the very top here, we have a lock. What that means is I cannot click on this anymore. I cannot touch this. And this kind of goes back to some guy who came up to me at one of the shows I was at, and I had the booth set up and all the radios out, and he said, "Oh man, I never buy one of these radios because I'm just clumsy and I would touch the screen in the middle of the flight, and I'm afraid that I will throw something off and crash the plane." And I told him, it's not really difficult for you to do that, but he's like, "Oh, you don't know me, I'm very clumsy." So right now the screen is locked, and you can still kind of move around. You can use all these and the scroll wheel as well, but you cannot touch the screen and have it do anything. And let's look at the screen. As we're flying, the 6-minute countdown is going, and the throttle cutoff has been on for about 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And we're showing VFR, which is 100% right now. And this would also be changing as well. This is the minimum VFR for 2.4 gigahertz. And it looks like I duplicated it again here. In reality, what I wanted to do is make this the 900 megahertz VFR and the 900 megahertz minimum. And to me, this is enough information. I don't need to see a photo of the plane when I'm flying the plane. I can remember which plane is in the sky is mine. However, this is just the pertinent information I need to make decisions as I'm flying around. And as I come in to getting ready for landing, I hit
landing,
the last flight mode. We go into landing, and this one you can see the lock is off, and which means I can touch the screen now. And because of that, what I have is I'm kind of realizing that in this, when you're put yourself into the landing flight mode, you're probably in the last 30 to 45 seconds of flight, and you're not really paying attention to the screen, but you still have the timer in case you want to look down. However, everything is set on minimum, so it's minimum RSSI, minimum VFR, that's for 2.4 gigahertz, and it would be minimum RSSI and VFR for 900 megahertz. So this is something to look at after the flight. And then when I take the flight down, I would let off on the throttle, and when it's time to cut throttle
cut,
it goes back to the original home screen. Now, one other thing that I have set up is there was something I wanted to work with, but this thing is kind of, you have to hit return when you're done looking at it. So I put this on the G switch, and if I keep pressing the G switch, we go to the flight data record, which is something I showed you how to find inside of the RF section. And as I mentioned before, it kind of goes over all the basics. This is just a very quick basic information about the flight. It will give you a rundown of your minimum, maximum RSSI, VFR, everything you need to know, and you can always save the file, and you can send it off to somebody to look at the file in case you find anything peculiar. Still, the best thing to do is to have a telemetry log file, and I showed you how to do that in the previous video. So with all that, we have ourselves a really bitchin' little plane. And yes, I said bitchin' because I did grow up in the 70s. So let's take a look at how we set it up. If I go to the model and I go to the next page, there's a whole bunch of special functions here. So instead of going through each and every one of them, I'll show you how I did it. So for example, landing was, actually it's these down here. Everything says home screen. Go to home screen,
sensor
throttle
loss,
cut. So we'll go into one of these. When throttle cut is on, what it does is it goes to screen number 1. So we go to screen, it's enabled. The thing that enables it is throttle cut, and you go to screen number 1. And when I wanted to get out of it, I did the same thing, except that I chose the not throttle cut, and we covered that a bunch of times, how to set up the not condition, and it went to home screen number 2. The function screens, these were all the different functions, as far as the flight mode 1 was home screen 2, flight mode 2 was home screen 3, and flight mode 3 was home screen 4. And you can see that there was takeoff, cruise, and landing. Those were the different screens for each one of those. So I set up these screens. How do you set up the screens? You go into, back to home, and you go into here, and this is the little screen
sensor
icon,
loss,
and you go, and each one of these was configured. So I assigned a value, and the value was a 6-minute countdown timer here, and the value for VFR was telemetry VFR for 2.4 gigahertz, and the value for the minimum was the same thing, except that
sensor loss,
what I did was you long press on this and you select minimum, and it displays the minimum values. So that's how it was all set up, and I know I would love to take you through a much longer video and explain each and every one, how I set up in each and every one of these, but what I will do is make this file available for people to download so that they can get their hands on it and take a look at it. And with that, we are done with this portion of the video series. We're done with setting up this plane. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, let's keep going with episode 16. Thanks for watching.